Welcome to Muse News, the show where we talk about all things Memorial University and beyond. I'm your host, John Harris, editor-in-chief of the Muse. Today in the CHMR studio, we are joined by a legendary playwright and actor, Andy Jones. Andy is a member of the Order of Canada, the Order of Newfoundland and Labrador, and an honorary Doctor of Letters from our very own Memorial University, along with decades of experience on the stage, which include playing Prospero in The Newfoundland Tempest, his adaptation of Moliere's Tartuffe, and most recently, Don't Give Up on Me, Dad. He also appeared in films including The Secret Nation, Rare Birds, and my personal favorite, The Adventure of Faustus Bidgood. He is the author of Actor Needs Restraint, monologues, recitations, clown turns, and comedy sketches, published by Breakwater Books and available now. Andy, thank you so much for joining us in CHMR Studios.
Thank you for having me, John.
I hope that introduction wasn't too long, but tell us, what was it like getting an honorary doctorate from Memorial?
I always say that that's the best honor that we ever got. My generation, you got to understand, the university was really big to us. MUN was such a big jewel in the crown of Newfoundland, and that African Federation, the university took off, and we all got to go to university. You know, John, that the year I went to university, and maybe your dad too, I'm not sure, there was free education.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
So small. In fact, when I was in high school at Gonzaga, one day they brought us up to the Confederation building, and Joey was there, Joey Smollett, and he announced free education for the next 4 years for all of Memorial students.
Wow.
And so for those 4 years, and then after that 4 years, they started paying people to go to university. It was like a real socialist thing. That was the most socialist thing that Smallwood ever did. It's a brilliant, brilliant idea. And now, look where things are now. I know you guys are having a hard time. Yeah, that was amazing. So anyway, So MUN was always big to us. So when we got that honorary degree, my mother had died by that time, but I was thinking, of course, that would be the joy of her life to think, oh my God, one of my children got a PhD. Two of her children, because Kathy, my sister, was there. So we both got PhDs or whatever, for doing nothing.
Wow, that's incredible. So you studied in St. Mary's University, correct?
I did,
You
yeah.
studied theology and English. How did that come about?
Well, actually, so I didn't take advantage of Smallwoods, which is crazy. It was a foolish move. But anyway, I got a scholarship to go to St. Mary's because I went to a Jesuit high school. And I went to St. Mary's, and I just started to do English because I didn't know what to do. And then I took a couple of theology courses and got interested, so I ended up doing a double major.
So many of your skits and sketches have kind of parodied the church in the past. Has that, going to Gonzaga, going to St. Bon's, and it comes up a lot in your sketch comedy as well. Does that theological background kind of help you with those monologues or parodies?
Well, going to those schools helped me for sure, the theological courses. I took 5. Well, I took 5. In those days, a course lasted a whole year, right? 2 semesters. But no, it did, and I was always interested. And we were always, as kids, we were just doing sketch. We were doing comedy all the time, fooling around. Greg Malone and I were in school together from grade 1, and my sister, Kathy, was always interested, and it was the era of sketch comedy, and Monty Python was just about to begin, and Beyond the Fringe was a great British group that we all loved so much. And so we were making fun of the priests all the time, making fun of the Christian Brothers, and making fun of the teachers. That's all we ever did.
And the Goon Show as well.
And the Goon Show in England, yeah, we listened to that when we were young. So that's where our roots were, I think, more in England than they were in America in some ways, yeah. And
your dad also owned a tape recorder, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Dad actually sold tape recorders. So we had a tape recorder at home, which was nobody had in those days. So we used to record sketches, and we would make foolish sketches up and record them.
And I also have something to show you here. You taught a course at Memorial back in 2007 September, which earned you the front page of the Muse.
I don't remember that.
So here's you teaching English 4401, which is a course that you called Producing the Play. So you made it. You were on the front page of the Muse.
I was. I didn't even realize that. Oh my God, I didn't know that. Yeah. They still teach that course, producing the play. As far as I know, it's part of the diploma in communications and theater and so on. Yes, that was we had a great group. We had a group of young actor, performer, producer type people, and then we did a play called Pilk's Madhouse, and they called themselves the Sketchy Lot. That was their name. Yeah.
The LSPU Hall, it's a place that you've acted, directed, or written dozens of plays in, and something you call the National Theater of Newfoundland. What has the LSPU Hall and Resource Center of the Arts meant to you in your life?
Well, it meant almost everything in terms of being a performer and getting to do my work. We kind of took over the hall in 1979, and started working down there pretty full time, and we were determined to produce local stuff, absolutely, as possible, exclusively. But of course, we branched out after that, and so, and in a way, I use that term, that I was thinking it would be the National Theatre of Newfoundland. But in fact, of course, the National Theatre of Newfoundland has ended up being, Trinity and Cowhead and all the other small companies across the province. But anyway, that was the idea. And we did, and they've done, I don't know how many shows, original shows have been produced at the LSPU Hall through the Resource Center for the Arts. I mean, originally produced not only by the Resource Center for the Arts, but by other people. So it was a place to go to get real new stuff and stuff locally written put on. And we were determined, we had a co-production system so that if you wanted to do a show, almost anyone could do a show as long as you were a certain age. You could do a show, and we would divide the money 60-40, 40% for the hall, 60% for you. We give you 3 days rehearsal. We give you a technician and 3 ads in the telegram, and you could do your play. So Rick Mercer and them all started off that way. That's how they did their first shows.
Wow.
Those co-productions.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that really worked, that program. It was a brilliant little program.
How important do you think theater is to building a national or a local identity?
I don't know. I feel then the theater really was important in all of that. Again, you have to understand where we were coming from. We were just joined Canada. We were the first Canadians, our generation, and then almost immediately we were the Newfie joke people. We were being mocked by Canadians, and we just joined, and we were full of hope. And Smallwood had told us we could be educated, which very few people were before. And we had all this great, and we also were very aware of what an incredibly rich culture we had and how we used the language like nobody else in English Canada. And we were full of this pride. And all of a sudden, then we were also being told that we were, the poor, stupid people who were living off the largesse and kindness of the Canadians. And so we really were fighting that. And we were quite, as you'll see, a lot of those shows, like Secret Nation and those, were kind of anti-Confederate shows. This was the first thing that we had to do, I think, when we came out. So at that time, of course, was before current media situation. So the theater was very important, and that first company, Codco, and I wasn't in that very first show, but that really did strike a chord. And people like a friend of mine told me recently that he was younger than me, but he said that he was in high school. They used to sneak in to see the shows. It was like the coolest thing in St. John's was the theater company, and all the kids wanted to come see it, and it really made a difference. I can brag because I wasn't there at the very beginning of that, so the theater did there. I don't know whether the theater has that same strength anymore because there's so much else happening, but I do think it may have more because it's analog. It's the one thing that you can't. AI, I suppose AI could write the script for you, but like the event you're having there can't be AI'd. It can only happen real.
And so Newfoundlanders kind of responded to a lot of that, feeling of being new, feeling of being left out, feeling of being the butt of the joke by being very good comedians, you know?
Well, I guess so. Then my big theory of comedy, of course, is that comedy has always been extremely important to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, much more so than other parts of the country. And I was thinking of, I was thinking of Johnny Burke, the famous songwriter. He was basically a comedy songwriter. He wrote so many comic songs. They spread across the Newfoundland. There was Ray Guy. You know Ray Guy. I don't know if you students out there listening know the incredible Ray Guy, who was a journalist, and he was the man who unseated Joey Smallwood. The pen is, in fact, mightier than the sword. And when I taught school in 1971-72 on the Southern Shore, every kid in that school, that high school, read Ray Guy's columns every week. He was the biggest cultural hero. It's hard to believe that could happen in any province in Canada, but it did happen in Newfoundland. Then when the Wonderful Grand Band happened on TV, everybody watched that. He beat out all the other American shows and stuff in the ratings. You know, then look at Buddy Wass's Name, how they have just seeped into the culture, every aspect, every class, you know, color, creed, whatever, loves them. And then the Codco TV show, maybe a little less than Buddy Wass's Name, but Buddy Wass's Name, of course, were a theater. I mean, they were live, which is amazing to think that, you know, they didn't have very much television support at all. And out of that, and these small comedy groups came Rick Mercer and Mark Critch, Andrew Younghusband, and Steve
Harris.
Cochran, Johnny Harris. They all came out of these small groups. So, you know, my theory is that for some reason or other, comedy is important to us. And, you know, our heroes, Pete Soucy was on the news. Amy House and Bertie Stapleton were on the news. Ray Guy was on the news. Rex Murphy was on the news. Like, during our actual news shows, they had comedians on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's so important to build that collective experience, you know, having local, you know, I feel every day we see more and more, you know, programming from the United States or, you know, blockbuster movies. I think film is also a big part of that. And, you know, you were growing up around or in your career during the building of NIFCO and, you know, making of Adventure of Faustus Bidgood, which took, you know, 10 years because of budget constraints. And now you see the Film Corporation dealing, you know, having more budget and more, you know, it's more importance is placed on film in terms of cultural identity. How do you think that film played a role in terms of the cultural renaissance in Newfoundland as well?
Well, I'm not sure of any of these things because they're just theories, I guess, but I certainly saw the people who were involved in the theater in those days a lot of them were the people involved in NIFCO, the Newfoundland Independent Filmmakers Co-op. We were not the filmmakers, they were a different group, but we worked together making those early scripts, all the early films. Most of them were, you know, written by and performed by the theater community of St. John's. And it certainly did build, you know, to the point that it's now an industry, quite an important industry in Newfoundland. And those images were seen by people, and, you know, and certainly in terms of television, Codco got out there on television, and 22 Minutes, and Johnny Harris's show now, and Andrew Younghusband's show, all these things that happened. So I think that there's a major thing. You know, it's all part of a big, I don't know what it was. There was a big feeling of, you know, we have something special. And we always knew that. And in some ways, Newfoundlanders were said to have an inferiority complex. But really, we had a kind of superiority complex because we knew we were, you know, we had way greater humor and way more wonderful control of the English language than, again, I said, any other part of English Canada.
Yeah, I think I relate to you when it comes to the superiority complex feeling, because, you know, I just love our culture and our so many great films, great theater, and great, you know, entertainers come from here. You know, just You can list off the list for days, and even though in the modern era you still have like Mark Critch, Johnny Harris, Sean Majumder, you have Tom Power on the queue, you know, Alan Doyle. The list, you know, Kathy Jones, Mary Walsh, the list just goes on and on. I think that it's it's easy to have pride, and I think we punch above our weight in terms of art and comedy. And so, growing up, what was it like, being on the mainland? So you took a move to Toronto, and what was people's perception in Toronto of Newfoundlanders at that time?
Well, I guess first I went to university in Halifax when I was 18 or whatever, and that's when I first realized, oh my God, like they're making fun of us because we're Newfoundlanders, and they made fun of Cape Bretoners too. And I realized, so I never was quite aware of that until I got to there. And then I did my degree, and then I went teaching for a year, and then I went to Toronto, and then I realized it again. Although luckily we were in the theatre, which was very benevolent place to be, and particularly Theatre Passe Muraille in Toronto, who are extremely good to us. Unbelievably good. They really were our spiritual home in Toronto. So we hung out there for a few years, and then I went to England, then I came back to Newfoundland, and then Codco started. And then with my family, we went there in 93 to 96. But by that time, it had changed. Everyone was much more, on board with Newfoundland. And the amazing thing is everybody wants to come to Newfoundland now. But when we went to Newfoundland, we went to Toronto in like the 60s, 69, 70, like that. The thought of going to Newfoundland, what? Why would anybody ever want to go to that place? It's poor, the weather's miserable, the people are downtrodden, and it's completely flipped around now, which is great.
It is funny to see, because I definitely, I think that something like the COD moratorium had a huge impact on our self-esteem and on our image. But seeing, how much, people see Newfoundland as a desirable location to visit. And, we were interviewing tourists on the street of downtown St. John's, and everybody, singing how amazing, this place is. And I think it definitely is good to remind ourselves of where we came from as well.
Yes, definitely. Yep.
So, what is the story? Let's get to the book now. Yep. What is the story behind the title, Actor Needs Restraint?
Well, that's from a review that I got in Toronto. I was a little out of control. And the reviewer felt this actor could use some restraint. And so, again, it's not the best title because people don't get that. But anyway, that was the first review for my first one-man show called Out of the Bin, which is the opening show of this book, actually. And that's basically the story.
And so the first Out of the Bin showing at the LSBU Hall was a fundraiser for Mary Lynn Bernard, your partner, to go to a trip to Guyana. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. She was with Canadian Crossroads International. And part of their mandate was to raise the money to help themselves to go. And she went and worked in a clinic down there and worked in a few other jobs helping, in a underdeveloped country, or however you say that properly now. And then she came back but that's why I did the show in the first place. And then I realized the show was good, so I pushed, and we went and did it for 3 or 4 more years, off and on. And I still use the material. I used the material, 2 weeks ago at the Sketch Comedy Festival, same material from that same show.
So tell me about the Sketch Comedy Festival.
Yeah, the Sketch Comedy Festival this was the second year this year. I saw a few things last year, but this year I saw everything except 2 acts. There were 28 entities in that festival, if you count individuals or groups. And sometimes they only had 10 minutes each the first night. And I think I saw 26 of them, other than the 2, of course, that I was in. And it was a whirlwind experience. And it was I was so overwhelmed and so amazed at all the talent and all the places that those shows took me, and also that the incredible organization. They were so well organized. They were brilliant, those young people who did that festival. It was a real education for me to see what is going on, and to see how many people are, and how the edges of sketch comedy have blurred a bit. Like some people are a little more. Well, there were clown people there. Brilliant clown thing about colonization. Wonderful clown piece there. And then there was lots of underpant area humor, which I'm good at too, front and back, and lots of intellectual, political stuff, a lot of queer content. It was just an amazing treat.
Who, and not to put you on the spot, but who are you excited about in the new age of comedy?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question because there's so many people, and also I have an old brain. But I did see some great. I mean, I think that Andrew Tremblett and those guys with bicycle jousting are great, and Mom's Girls, of course, are always great. Sam Chalk. Do you know her?
Yes, yeah.
She's wonderful. Yeah, I shouldn't be mentioning because there's so many other people, but I was really impressed by her. Sarah Conway was wonderful. She's got some great stuff. She's really coming up through the ranks there. I liked seeing. We did Pilk's Madhouse, which is a show I did in 1972, and we did half an hour, and that really worked too, which was really interesting to see all the young people do that. And that was Tegan Follett and those guys. I think that Cheap Wine from Toronto were just incredible. I really, really loved them. There was two groups from Washington who were very interesting, very different, very American. You could see they had a different style for sure. They were a little more old-fashioned kind of comedy in some ways, I think, but still very good. Oh, my God. There was the group from St. John's. I can't remember what they're called. They only do material about bicycle the rights of cyclists in St. John's. What are they called? Oh,
I haven't heard of them.
Oh, yeah, they're called Every Sketch Should Be About for the People, or I forget what they're called. Anyway, they were very, very good. Just I was trying to think who else, because I had 28 different groups. And anyway, lots of great stuff.
That sounds.
I wish I had known you would ask because I would have. I had my list. And
we can.
Yeah. I don't know, like seeing Doug Boyce. If you've seen Doug Boyce do stuff, he's really ridiculous and funny and crazy. There was the Four Idiots. There's only three of them. They were great. Then there's Mikwazi Ogbonna, who was a very political performer from Toronto. There was Pre-Ghost and Good Productions, which was Luke Rowe and Bailey Jackson and Lonnie Patey and Christian House and Brandon Cave, Michaela Sheldon, and they were also the producers along with I forget the chairman of the board of the group, Dana Puddicombe, who ran a beautiful production here. There was I mentioned those other guys before, bicycle jousting. There's and I didn't see Cam Wiley and Colin Sayed because they were before my show, so I had to stay around and fret by myself for a while. And then there were Chaps who were very good. There was Big Chick Energy, incredible energy from those guys. Mom's Girls, as I mentioned before, the Itty Bitty Skitty Committee, Toad Walk, and the Tutu Mango were the clown company that did this wonderful thing about colonialism, and they were brown people from Pakistan, and they had this beautiful show, and they put whiteface on to do the piece.
Wow.
And they called for volunteers from the audience to be the other white people in the boat, and Uzzel Dosanjh, Uzzel, who was a young East Indian actor, was in the audience, and they called it, and he got up, and they said, no, you have to sit down, you're not allowed to be on the boat, because there was only white people. And that was a great moment of the festival. It went from, that very serious thing, very funny but serious thing about colonialism to, people putting chocolate-covered donuts down their underpants.
So you've always been known as a real, friend to the young performer, and Rick Mercer tells about you offering to lend his your car to go to and lending out your cabin to when he was a young actor wanting to work on a comedy material with his troupe. What does it mean to you for supporting the new generation of actors and comedians?
Well, I think we always felt that way among ourselves, that we should be helping each other out. The theater generally is pretty kindly place for the most part, compared to film, which is a little more vicious. But I think that I had a rule I used to say was, I'll give anybody one day. So like if you have an idea and you have I say, okay, I'll give you a day. And we'll meet in the morning, and if we're still talking by noon, then we can go into we'll have lunch, then we'll go into the afternoon. And then, then I can go on from there and, and go see your show or something or whatever. And I think that's the way most people were, is people just helped each other and got people going whenever possible.
Wow. I've never heard that before. Giving anybody one day of your time. That's amazing.
Well, of course, our time was, also it wasn't like we had a 9-to-5 job or anything either, right?
Because you often hear, I'll give you an hour, I'll give you a minute, or, an elevator pitch kind of situation. But
maybe it was extreme, but anyway. Yeah, I seem to have time to do that. I mean, not many people did it, but people did. I would say, okay, well, let's go.
Wow.
We'll go to lunchtime, and then if we're still cooking, then we can go into the afternoon, and then...
So tell us about Letters to Uncle Val. How did the Uncle Val character come about, and is there a specific person in your life that you draw inspiration from, or is it a accumulation?
Yes, absolutely. Like Uncle Val was really based on an actual guy, and his name was Francis Colbert, and he was from Job's Cove in Conception Bay, and he was a great guy. I got to know him really well. A lovely, lovely man. He's since died. He was a good bit older than me. He was, he was a reciter, and he did all the standard Newfoundland recitations, lobster salad and the smoke room on the Kyle and all those. But he also wrote his own things. He wrote a great piece called The Ballad of Job's Cove Rock. And in fact, I just saw it on TV the other day. Someone's got it on an old Land and Sea tape. So I started hanging out with him, and I just loved his wit, and very dry, the way he spoke, and a beautiful accent. I love that accent from Job's Cove, which is the same accent that Ray Johnson from Buddy What's-His-Name has. That's those soft R's, those very soft R's. Close the door. Come in, Johnny. Close the door. And that's the way I just could listen to the guy forever. And so I started to write for him. And then I realized I could never write about his life because I didn't know anything about being an Outport Newfoundlander, because he fished all his life. And so I wrote that he ends up, the character Uncle Val, has to come to St. John's, and he has to live in the suburbs of St. John's, which of course was where I grew up. So I got to tell all this stuff about the suburbs and what it was like growing up. And then plus my father was from Harbour Grace, so I got lots of stories from him, and so I mixed it all together, and that became Uncle Val. And so
a lot of your excerpts from this Actor Needs Restraint from the book have a lot of really helpful details. What was that process like with Breakwater working together to put together these bits and pieces?
I think that Breakwater said, we will publish 3 of those scripts. And I think they thought I'd have the scripts in by the following Friday. I'm sure they thought, well, he must have it all written down. And I did have the words written down, but it took us, myself and Charlie Thomason worked with me almost the whole way. It took us a whole year to, not we weren't working full time, but over a whole year to go in to every scene and say, well, that scene. But if you look at the opening dialogue, it's just, oh my Jesus, oh God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my Jesus. And so what does that mean? So I had to explain exactly everything I was doing as I was lying in bed in that opening scene. So it was like I came on stage without preparing a show. I was still in bed and hadn't managed to get out of bed, and I was trying to do the show from my bed. That took a long time, and I really wanted it to be readable so that people could read it and figure out why it was funny at the time, if in fact it was. And the notes also help a future playwright or dramaturgist to put that together for the stage as well. Yeah, right? I hope. I don't know if people would ever do it, but they could. Yeah. Yeah, and some of the piles of trash in the opening scene and weeks of depression laying down in the bed, really, it's really a groundbreaking kind of takes you out of the regular kind of theater. Something you mentioned in the introduction is, a lot of what maybe in here was kind of pushing the envelope for the time. But since there's been, South Park and Sacha Baron Cohen, do you think that
the comedy that you were doing back in the day with, Codco, which I really like to look back at those scenes and those sketches, and it really seems very anti-authoritarian. It was pushing up against a lot of power structures at the time. Do you think that comedy now is, what direction do you think that a lot of this work still holds up?
I think a lot of that work does hold up, and I realized that because I was looking at the queer content in the Sketch Comedy Festival, and I thought, gee, these young people really are, doing so much new stuff, and it's so much more normalized. But we were doing a lot of queer content in Codco too, and I thought, gee, we were saying all this stuff, and I'm surprised, and we got away with it, or people hooked on into it, and it made a difference. So we were political, and I think the young people are political. And it seems like when I look at the American stuff, like, I don't know about you, but I watch the American comedy shows to get the news more than anything, because I just can't listen to the news sometimes. But they're really taking on Trump. There's no doubt about it. All the comedy shows, and they're not giving an inch, which is really interesting. So I think, yeah, it's still there. It's just as much as it ever was. And, as long as comedy is comedy, it will be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the comedy at its best is taking on authority. It's pulling apart society and, the norms that have been given to people, and saying, maybe this is kind of funny the way things are, and maybe we can do things a bit differently. Yeah,
and to find, I guess, the human nature is always funny, no matter how tragic the situation is.
So tell us about what I watched Rare Birds at a showing at the Rooms in celebration of the Year of the Arts. It was put on by the provincial government. Rare Birds, what was that like, playing that supporting role alongside John Hurt?
William Hurt.
William Hurt, sorry. In that film. I mean, it's amazing role. I really enjoyed it.
It was, like a gift from the gods to get that. Ed Rich wrote that book, and if you've ever read the book is really, really funny. I love the book, like so many other people did. And I never, ever thought of myself as playing that character. And then the director asked me to do it. I thought he meant the other character, the William Hurt character. He said, no, we want you to do Fonz. I said, oh my God, Fonz is so different than I am. He's a guy who can do anything. He's an arse and a cat guy, he can build anything, do anything. He builds a submarine in the movie. And I thought, I'm totally nothing like that guy. And he kept pushing me, and I eventually realized that I could do it. And I did a lot of research, and I was down. I got some help. I went down to the Kingsbridge service station and got them to show me how to, redo a carburetor, and just so I could do the right things, when I was doing it. And I learned, how to, use other equipment, that rescue equipment and things like that were there. So I spent a lot of time, getting ready for that character. And also I asked Ed if I could change from what's sort of like an Irish Newfoundland accent or place to a West Country English, which is a slightly different accent. I found I could do that character better with that. Not that it's heavily accented or anything, but it has those soft L's and stuff that come from that part of Newfoundland. So it was just a gift, and I love doing it, and it's the most contactable thing I ever did for most Newfoundlanders. I used to, when that movie came out first, I couldn't walk out. Every time I walked out the front door, at least three times, people would stop me in the street. And now it's very, very, very rare, but for a long time, people loved that character so much, and he was a lovable character. And William Hurt, God rest his soul, he's since died. He supported me and was a very good foil, but was also very, very funny himself, right? So, and I don't know, as like Alan Hall, the professor at MUN English department, a great guy, said to me, he said, you really got inside the skin of that character, didn't you, Andy? I said, yes, I did.
That's incredible, and it really showed. I absolutely love that movie. It's the DVD is a hallmark at my partner's family cabin, where that's the movie that gets put on whenever there's a movie night. So
Really?
it's an incredible. I mean, if you look at the movies that have been shot in Newfoundland and are really Newfoundland movies, there's been plenty that are shot. Hallmark movies get shot here now, but they're not quite Newfoundland movies. But I do really think that is one of the greats in terms of our cinema, and it's really such an incredible performance.
Yeah, Ed Rich also wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
And Paul Pope produced it. So he wrote the novel, then he wrote the screenplay, because he's a filmmaker himself, of course.
Absolutely. So, actor needs restraint. If we open up the front, it says Volume 1. Can we expect a Volume 2 anytime soon?
They said they wanted to produce so I've got 6 shows, and the 6th show is not so much comedy. It's about our son, Louis, who died in 2014. And I don't know whether they'll do that separately, but I have 2 more, I guess pure comedy shows, or whatever you want to call them. I'm hoping that they'll produce. Yeah, they want to. They want to.
So tell us about your play, Don't Give Up on Me, Dad, about your son who died by suicide. What was that like, going through, writing that and remembering your son, and you've been putting it on, and really it's a conversation that has been taking place about suicide as well. What was that process like?
It was difficult. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and I started not too long after he died to try to put together his records, and also to try to do some research, which I wish I'd done while he was alive, because I learned a lot after he died. And eventually I got all his medical records for his whole life, and I used those, and in fact I use them in the show. I found it very hard not to be totally emotionally involved from the very beginning. So I spent a lot of time crying and being in tears throughout the process. And I got a lot of help from my partner, Mary Lynn, of course, and from my neighbors like Brenda O'Brien and Mark Ferguson, and who I would call up and cry on their shoulders, and my sister Mary Wynn, of course, and her husband Mike, and so I had lots of friends and people like that, and I had the great director Charlie Tomlinson, who stayed with me all the way through it, and the Resource Center for the Arts, Nicole Russo, and then Megan Greeley, all really helped me all the way through. And then it got closer and closer to opening, and I thought, and Marilyn was saying, you can't fall apart on stage. You must keep it together. You can't. And I say, I know. And I got right up to I even had a little signal I used to use if I started to fall apart. That I would tell the audience, if you see me do this, it means I sort of did I grabbed hold of my nose and waved my hand as if I was drowning, but I was still waving to say, don't worry, I'm just treading water down here. And I never had to use it. Never had to use it, which is great. And by the time I got on stage, I'd stopped crying myself, and I let the audience cry instead. But that took a long time. And I remember that, about the third last dress rehearsal I had, or I remember a bunch of Louis, my son was named Louis, when Louis' friends came to see the show. I really found it hard to get through that show. And then once I got over that, then I was able to do it. It's always emotional, of course, but I was able to control myself. And I keep thinking, Don't Give Up on Me, Dad is the title, which Louis said to me all the time when he was a kid. He said, don't give up on me, Dad. I said, Louis, I'll never give up on you. He was always getting in trouble in school all the time. And he used to say that to me. So I think, well, maybe I guess by doing this show, I'm not giving up on him in some way, maybe.
And what would you tell other family of people who've had relatives or loved ones? What would you tell them to advice and how to move through that experience?
Wow, I don't know. I just think there are great great people around, and we met some of them to help. But ultimately, I think you have to realize that you're on your own, and you have to figure something out. There is no solution to. I don't think it's a problem. It's like people are the way they are, and our species has a certain number of people who are overwhelmed by the anxiety that our species needs in order to have survived. And it seems like whoever gave out the anxiety didn't care how much they were giving out, as long as it spread to everyone, and some people got more, and it ruins their lives. And it ruined our son's life. He really suffered terribly from intrusive thoughts and just incredible anxiety, and I guess schizophrenia was the term they used, and I know that has a broad definition too, but it seems like we haven't figured anything out, and that I sort of said that in the show. It's like, we never blamed anybody, and there's no such thing as them and us. We are confused. It's not the medical profession that's confused. Humanity is confused by these events that happen to people who are considered to have mental illness. And as someone said, almost everybody in prison has mental illness, or they have personality disorders, which is another term for mental illness, or they have addictions, which is another kind of illness. It's almost like every single person who's in jail really needs some other kind of help. So that's not good news. It's not like, by the way, boys, this is an easy solution. It's much more difficult, but somebody has to say it.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody, as much as people are peddling cures for this and that, and as much research that has been done, we're still left with a lot more questions than we are answers. And at the end of the day, I think you've done a beautiful job moving through your grief in terms of putting that into theater and speaking openly and spreading the word about this and your son Louis, and keeping his memory alive. Yeah, even though all we have is a big question mark at the end of it, but yeah. Anyway, yep. So, beyond the Volume 2 and moving forward with Breakwater on those publications, what's next for you? Are you working on any plays? Are you going to appear in any films or TV coming up? I have, other than, I have all kinds of small things like the Ochre Pit Festival this year, and I mean, I don't say small things, but one-off events. But I have nothing in the works in terms of being a major film or a big show. I'm going to try to write, try to dig deeper into my son's medical records and try to put some sort of a book out about those experiences if I can. Wow, I'm very much looking forward to that. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today's program. It's been a real treat to hear so much about your work, and thank you so much.